Tourism, travel, and relocation has been growing exponentially in Vietnam. Actually, it has now, in the last 2 years, some have reported that there was a time that it actually surpassed Thailand as far as dollars earned. There's been a lot of people coming to Vietnam, but this guy in his video is claiming that it's all a lie. At least that's what the title says. We're going to watch this all at the same time to see what's going on here. You know, I used to live in Vietnam for a little while, and I have a few people who live in Vietnam who watch me. Shout out to Saigon T. But let's get to it, shall we? Let's see what he has to say about Vietnam.
Vietnam's economy is growing faster than almost every country on the planet. We're talking 8% growth, while most of the rich world is happy to scrape past 2%. The stock market jumped more than a third in 12 months. Total trade blew past $930 billion. Foreign money keeps flooding in. Factories keep going up. Poverty has fallen through the floor. And the real middle class is spending real money for the first time. On paper, Vietnam looks unstoppable. Except there's a catch. Almost every company driving the export is foreign. The factories run on Chinese parts, and the growth holding everything together leans on debt climbing faster than the economy itself. In this video, I'll tell you what is really happening in Vietnam. I'll give you all the data and information you need to decide by yourself if Vietnam is really the next place to be or just a fragile boom dressed up as a miracle. My name is Bertrand. I've been doing business in Asia for 26 years. I'm not guessing how it works here. I deal with it every week.
I was going to say that one thing I saw about his channel introduction when I was looking at it, it says that he allegedly builds fintech in Asia, more specifically, I believe Southeast Asia. But it looks like maybe it's not clickbait according to what he's saying. I was thinking he's trying to clickbait us, but now it looks like he's actually speaking from his personal opinion. So he believes that the boom is a lie. I say, me living there for the short period of time I lived there, I could see crazy growth, more specifically in Ho Chi Minh. But yeah, I'm interested to see what he has to say and if he actually does live in Vietnam, right?
That's why I created this channel, to share my perspective from the inside. If that's useful to you, subscribe. 50 years ago, Vietnam was one of the poorest countries on earth, flattened by war, importing food it couldn't grow.
He's going to do the YouTube thing where let me add some time onto this video by talking about the history from 50 years ago and explain all this other stuff that has nothing to do with the title. Which, you know, hey, that's his thing. Shout out to Stratries, is how you pronounce it. But we want to skip past that. We want to go to what he talks about in the title.
The answer is that hardly any of them are Vietnamese. Close to 80% of everything Vietnam exports come from foreign companies that set up on Vietnamese soil and run the operation themselves. Samsung alone accounts for roughly a fifth of the country's entire export volume. Vietnam has become the second largest smartphone exporter on the planet. But the phones are not Vietnamese, and neither are the factories stamping them out. Here's the cleanest way to see the problem. On the one hand, foreign companies sell the world far more than they buy from it, generating a surplus of around $50 billion. On the other hand, Vietnamese companies buy more than they sell, ending with a deficit of around $30 billion. Pull the outsiders out of the picture, and Vietnam buys more from the world than it manages to sell back. And it's not just export. A third of every formal job in the country is inside one of these foreign companies. Companies that arrive for cheap labor and can leave the day it stops being cheap. That changes what the growth is worth. When a Japanese or Korean giant turns a profit inside a Vietnamese plant, the money flies back to Tokyo or Seoul at the end of the quarter. The brand stays abroad, the technology stays abroad, and the thick end of the margin lives with them. What Vietnam keeps is the wages and the rent on the land, real income for the people earning it, but it's the thinnest slice of a very large pie. I know what you think. What's the problem? Vietnam doesn't own the factories, at least it builds the products. Well, it's more complicated than that, because the parts inside the made in Vietnam products almost never started out in Vietnam.
And that is crazy to hear that the products didn't start out in Vietnam, because I remember specifically on my flight, there was a guy, he was from the city, it's like an hour away from Shenzhen, China, and he was telling me, like on my flight, like, hey, all these factories, because I was talking about how in the US, hey, you know, we try to reduce certain things from China, or certain places got banned. He was like, how they get around it is they just make a factory in Vietnam, and then even though it's still technically from China, it just says made in Vietnam because that's where the factory's at. So to hear this report as all these foreign companies actually setting up shop in Vietnam, selling products, and that the Vietnamese are buying more products from foreigners than they are selling, and it's crazy. It confirms what he was saying. Even with these that he's showing now in the video, it talks about how these are made in China. So it's like, wow. I thought it was, I mean, I believe the guy because he was from China. I don't think he would lie about something like that, but to hear it from another source is definitely interesting.
Walk through one of those factories and the work you'll see is mostly assembly. The expensive parts, the screens and the chips that actually cost money turn up at the border already finished. And they come mostly from one country, China. Every day, thousands of trucks cross the Chinese border carrying the parts that keep Vietnamese factories alive. Around 94% of everything Vietnam imports is this kind of thing, parts and components.
94%?
Not finished products for Vietnamese people to buy. So, a made in Vietnam sticker almost always means assembled in Vietnam out of Chinese pieces. That last step, the clicking together, is the cheapest part of the entire chain, and it's the part Vietnam landed. China designs the product and builds the bits that matter. Vietnam slots them into place and ships the box. So, the country everyone calls the next China sits right at the tail end of China's supply chain. Vietnamese do the job that pays the least and can't run for a single week without parts crossing the border from the north. And it gets worse. For a slice of these products, even calling it assembly is generous. Some goods barely pose in Vietnam at all. They arrive from China already finished, picked up a fresh label, and carry on to America as if they had been Vietnamese all along. Washington estimates that out of every $15 of goods Vietnam sells the US, around 5 is simply Chinese products passing through. To legally wear a made in Vietnam tag, roughly a third of a product's value is supposed.
I swear I did not watch this video before, but he's confirming everything that I am saying. But he gives specific numbers. He said a third. He believes a third of the things made or said that they're made in Vietnam are actually made in China. It just has that made in Vietnam slapped on top of it for legal reasons. It's crazy.
Supposed to be created inside the country, and plenty of exports failed to meet that bar, adding next to nothing before moving on. Washington took notice. Anything it now suspects of being Chinese goods in a Vietnamese costume is taxed at 40% instead of the usual 20%. And the rule is loose enough that a single Chinese chip buried in your product can drag the entire thing into that higher bracket. Chinese companies that rushed into Vietnam to dodge American tariffs in the first place are already canceling new factories and backing out. So the model has a crack in it, and that one comes from outside. But there's a second crack. This one from Vietnam, the electricity bill. Last year, Vietnam's economy grew 8%, but the amount of electricity it used barely moved, up less than 5%. In a country that runs on factories, power and growth rise together, because making things consumes electricity. For years, Vietnam's power use actually climbed faster than its economy. But that stopped last year. Hanoi has an explanation. Milder weather, more rooftop solar that never touches the national grid, and a building spree of roads and bridges that eats less electricity than heavy industry.
I like to see that Vietnam is coming up, especially everything that they've been through in the different countries that ruled them or attempted to rule them, all the wars they've been in, things of that nature. You know, at one point China ruled them for over 1,000 years, which is crazy. There's a lot of things they don't teach us in American history when they talk about the Vietnamese War that happened. And once you learn the truth of it, you're like, wow, you really feel for the people. Like, I really want them to come up. Even Ho Chi Minh, the guy, in American history class, I feel like, and I don't want to get too political, but I feel like they kind of paint him as a bad guy. But they don't tell us that he came to America and he asked the U.S. to help him, help his people, help his country, etc. before we even went to war with him. But we just blew him off. So, but I was going to say, the thing about the electricity, and I was going to make a video about this. I haven't made it yet, about me living in Vietnam, my true experience. Some people may be offended when I make the video, but they talk about electricity. There were times in Vietnam, unfortunately, where I lost electricity. Keep in mind, I'm in the big city of Ho Chi Minh, so I can only imagine some of the more rural areas where maybe it's not as developed, or maybe there's not as many technology companies out there. But me personally, I definitely lost power a few times while living in Ho Chi Minh. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Fair enough, but follow that logic all the way down and it turns into an admission. If the growth is coming from pouring concrete rather than running production lines, then the engine of this miracle is not the high-tech manufacturing, it's construction. Yes, roads, apartment towers, and airports absolutely create GDP. The difference is that unlike export factories, they don't generate foreign currency. Someone has to pay to build them first. And in Vietnam, that someone is increasingly the banking system, which is the real problem underneath all of this. The boom runs on borrowed money. Total credit in Vietnam now sits around 136% of the size of the entire economy. It's higher than almost any country at its income level, and last year it grew another 18%. So where is all that borrowed money actually going? Not to millions of small businesses. A big share ends up in property and in a handful of giant conglomerates building apartments, malls and hospitals. The biggest of them all is Vingroup. Vingroup is the closest thing Vietnam has to an empire. It started selling instant noodles in Ukraine in the 90s, came home and now builds apartments, schools and electric cars. Now, Vingroup share makes up more than 18% of the VN index. With the other big listed companies in the group, you're close to 30% of the country's benchmark market. All that resting on one family of businesses. So when those few names have a good run, the market climbs with them, even
when they have a bad run, the market goes down. We know how that story goes. Shout out to this guy. If you want to see the full video, because I always encourage people, hey, if you're watching the reaction, or if you're, liking what you see, you can support the creator directly so he can get paid per view. And his name is Strategies, I think it's called, Statrys. So if you want to go ahead and support him, you can go ahead and do that. I like how detail oriented he is. At the beginning of the video, I'm like, oh man, I thought he's like one of the they call them fluff YouTubers who just say a whole bunch of anything just to try to fill up time to get more revenue and things like that. But he really started to get to the point, and he was direct. He gave exact statistics, so I always appreciate that. And he definitely sounds like he knows what he's talking about, so shout out to him. I encourage you to support him if you like that type of content. But as far as us, I do want to say this is my last one for the day. I think this is number 6 or 7, that I did for the day. It just happened to be the weekend. I think this is number 7. Yeah, number 7. So this will be my last one. It's currently 12:25 a.m. in Bangkok, Thailand. I just want to give y'all that quick update. I'll be going to the States sometime in the next 2 weeks. So I'm excited about that. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share, hype, all that type of stuff. But yeah, this is my last one. I got more coming for y'all. I went hard today because it was the weekend. I'm gonna try to do like maybe 7 or 8 more tomorrow, Sunday. Take advantage of this weekend and work hard. I've been building all day. I've been using AI, studying AI, building systems. Maybe I'll teach about some of the stuff I've been working on. We'll see. But shout out to all my people watching. Peace.